everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Adam.
I'm Felix.
And thank you for joining us to Making You a Better Performer Book Club. This is where we take some deep dives on some classic literature on how to be a better performer and entertainer in general. We are starting with, Felix, what book are we on chapter 2 of this time?
We are continuing with Fitzkees Showmanship for Magician. Last week we had the first chapter with Do Magicians Need Higher Standards, and now we are diving into the second one, which is called Things from Another Era.
Awesome. So we are doing 3 videos a week. That's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. We never monetize any of these videos. If you do want to support us and you're taking some value from it, please head over to vulpinecreations.com. That's the best place to support us and to keep up to date with our future releases. Enough of the promoting, let's dive right into chapter 2. And the topic at hand is apparatus, your wardrobe, and what do you say when you're on stage? So that's sort of a synopsis of what we're going to be diving into. Again, if this is your first time to this book review, this is an older book. So some of the verbiage in here seems a bit outdated, but through our discussions, we hope to modernize that a bit and have it make a little bit more sense for today's time. So Felix, in an overall sort of umbrella view, what did you take away? What do you think Fitzkee's main point of chapter 2 is? What's the message he's trying to drive home?
In a nutshell, I think he's trying to say, take your material, update it, and make it contemporary. Or, on the other hand, dedicate yourself 100% to a specific character and build a cohesive experience for your audience. Because every little detail which seems to be a little out of place is taken away from the experience and from your performance.
Exactly right. He's pretty harsh, which we talked about on the first one, and I think the harshness comes from his passion and love for the art. If he's doing his best, it makes him, this is all my thoughts, but it makes him upset to see people not doing their best. And he sees a very large gap from great to everybody else. So, he talks a lot about his table, the magician's table in this, and you can equate that to any prop. So even if you don't have a table on stage, are you using a change bag? Or if you're doing a confabulation, what props are you using for that? And it sounds a lot like he thinks most magicians' props have never grown into the date or the era. So we're all using these really old props because that's what the standard is. Take the ball and vase, for example. That prop has never been updated, and that's a 100-year-old prop. Or a lot of the old classic magicians' tables with the little tassels that come down. There are magicians today that still use that. So I guess the question is that a problem? And my answer is, it depends. It 100% depends on what you're trying to accomplish on stage. Who is your character? And he does talk a lot about that, right? What does he say?
Exactly. He says, if you habitually drive a 1910 car, dress the way, talk the way, and act the way like somebody from this period, it becomes an act, right? It's your persona, it's your character. And if you're consistent with it, it's an extreme fun ride for the audience to go back into this, let's say, romantic version of the 1910s and experience a magician from this area and just leave what you have here behind for a good time for a couple of minutes or even an hour. But if you only pick and choose individual items from that, it's very hard to tie them into without them having screaming, okay, this is a magic prop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're focused on 1910, let's take that, right? Some prop from 1910, and you bring that out and you, as let's say it's me, as a 40-year-old in 2021, and I come out with a very old change bag that has Victorian graphics on the side and gold lacing around. And then the very next trick I do is an updated comedy confabulation that uses modern props like a FedEx envelope or something like that. There's a drastic disconnect from me as a modern 2021 magician using this outdated prop. Now, with that said, of course, I could script it in a way that it made sense without having my entire character fit that. It's not as easy as just updating your prop to fit your character. For instance, I could say, the very first magic store I ever walked into, they sold these really old magic items, and this is one of them. You can get away with that in 1 or 2 routines maybe. but it also can quite quickly become a crutch where people go, okay, we get it. The story is you went into a magic shop and bought some old magic trick.
Yeah.
It's much better to find a way to update that prop. For instance, I'm in 2021. I'm a pretty modern style magician. So why not, instead of a change bag, use Creative Magic's change hat, right? It's just a ball cap that does the same thing. So he really puts an emphasis on the idea of modernizing your wardrobe and your props. And I think most magicians are pretty good at modernizing their props. There's so many magic tricks that come out to the market that it's not too hard to keep pretty modern props. I think there are some props that throughout time have always sort of stayed old and classic. The cups and balls is a great example. There are very few modern cups and ball routines. And that's fine, because inherently most scripts that I've seen where people do the cups and balls fall into this idea of, oh, it's a rite of passage for magicians. All magicians get these cups and balls, and we've all seen them, right? Most people, even laymen, have seen a version of the cups and balls. So that one may fly a lot better than something like a change bag. I do think that there's a way to modernize even the cups and balls that makes it a lot more relatable to an audience, right? So instead of cups, maybe it's a Yeti mug that you're using, or something that people go, oh, I know that thing. I've seen those before. So if you're not going to stick true to a character from start to finish that fits the props that you're using. For instance, a friend of mine, Andrew Pernard, has a great show where he talks about the history of magic. Well, all of the props, even his wardrobe, the way he speaks, they all from start to finish fit that theme. There's no disconnect from the theme as he's performing. When you walk on, go ahead. Yep.
Another example is Bob Hayden. You know, I'm
absolutely
very intensely going down the rabbit hole of his awesome magic and performances, and it's a
good rabbit hole to be stuck in, for sure.
Definitely, it's a lot of fun, and he's an extremely skilled performer. I mean, he's mind blowing, and super engaging. But what he is doing absolutely perfectly, he's having this medicine man, snake oil salesman persona. And even in his introduction, he explains that he got sucked into some vortex, timey-wimey thing through his love of high-pressure electronics in the 1910s, and basically got catapulted into the current day, and is still struggling to acclimatize to the modern world, right, and everything in between. And so he has this fine line where he goes between old and modern, but pulls it off magnificently. But to do this in, let's say, this, from my understanding, it works great in a stage setting. In a close-up setting, I'm not so sure, right? You know where I'm going with?
Interesting. I think I do 100%, because when you're on stage, it's implied this is my domain. You are here to watch me and my domain. That you sort of miss that. You still have to win the audience over, for sure, but you sort of miss the invasion, right? So in close-up, you're usually invading somebody's space. You don't get the announcer saying, and next up to do a close-up set is... Some restaurants, maybe a manager will introduce you, but in general, you're invading somebody's space. There's usually a conversation happening, and you're going into that. So to do that with this character, especially this character from the 1900s, could be more challenging. Now, I can't speak on it from experience, because my character is pretty modern, but I would definitely see that in a close-up space being more challenging than on a stage, because you don't have the luxury of saying, this is my stage, you're coming into my world. I would actually, that's a very interesting point. I would love to see a video of Pop Hayden at, say, a corporate event, hired in his character to do strolling magic. That would be a really cool thing to see how he gets the audience on board. Now,
absolutely,
it may just be the uniqueness of his wardrobe, right? He dresses so pristinely for that character that if I'm in that environment and someone came up like that, you'd have my attention, right? And I'm sure he's got an opening line that makes it make sense. So interesting point to bring up. I would love to see someone who plays that old character well do it in a strolling situation.
I mean, he's pulling it off extremely well, right? And all his props fit his character. The wardrobe fits his character. The grooming fits the character. If you know where I'm going with, everything... Nothing seems to be out of place. Nothing is off-putting. he is this character. He is Pop Hayden, right? He is this one person you would buy magnetic water from if he advertises it to you.
Yeah.
And you have no difficulty whatsoever believing and accepting this character he is portraying on stage. It's absolutely amazing.
Suspension of disbelief, right? It's like really good movies. So
Right,
we're
thank you
trying
very
to
much.
get them to
Yeah.
suspend their disbelief, right? And say, hey, come along for this ride, right? Look, we're all in this together. Now, some magicians don't, and some magicians will play the character of I'm truly magical. You know, there's I really see it as two forms of entertainers. They're the ones that are very serious, the Darren Browns, the Nate Staniforth, the David Blaine, and then there are the comedic entertaining, which Pop Hayden rides a really fine line of, because you're so instilled into his character. You're so convinced of this character that it's like watching a movie. You sit back and go, yeah, it's all made up, but I'm watching from start to finish. So really great entertainers in that serious tone can still get you on board, right? Can still get you to say, yeah, I'm coming along for the ride. In my performing experience, it's easier to have an entertainment as the main focus instead of the mystery around it all. Obviously, I want my effects and magic to be very fooling, to instill wonder and excitement and astonishment. But I also really, really want my audience to be laughing and smiling. Whereas someone like Darren Brown may rather the audience be quiet and in a moment of shock. And I think all of what he talks about in chapter 2 has to be addressed for you to get to that point, right? If I'm coming out and using a Pop Hayden script, but I'm dressed in a nice suit and I'm acting as if I'm a modern 2020 magician, my humor isn't going to work. The entertainment isn't going to be there, because there's this juxtaposition from what they see to what I'm trying to get them to experience. And that goes for your props, for your wardrobe, for the way you speak. He even talks about the timing and the rhythm and the pacing. You've got to know your character so well that you know exactly look at how any actor studies for a role. They know what motivates their character, what scares their character, what excites their character. They know this character as if it's them personally. So if you're trying to do anything that isn't you as a character, you've got to study that just as much as you're studying the magic. What are my props going to look like? What is my wardrobe going to feel like? Go ahead.
Dude, that's a very interesting point that you bring it up. And I really have a question on this, especially this part. Because you said a good actor understands everything about a character, right? Their backstory, the reason why they're acting this way. And I mean, I can jot up my script, right? I can break down my script into a way which could fit, for example, to a Pop Hayden character. But as soon as I start to interact with my audience, this all of this becomes much more difficult, right? Because I can't stick to my script.
Yeah.
And for example, if they say something which throws me completely off my script, how I'm going to react? I guess I will drop out of my 19th century's persona and will respond like someone from the 21st century.
That's a great point. It's a challenging one, right? And again, I think it comes back to having everything in place to fit. So my wardrobe, the way I speak, the props I'm using. So I'm in my zone, I've got my script, and somebody throws me for a loop. They ask me a question that takes me out of character. First, the easiest answer is to just don't break character. And if you have to pause before you answer, so you can remember that and go, okay, my character is this, how would he answer? That's not the best. But at the end of the day, sometimes that's what it'll take. Yeah. It's much better to pause for a moment as if you're thinking of the answer and then answer in character than to try and be quick-witted enough to answer immediately, because you may break that character if you do that. So for me, I have a little bit easier because my character is me, right? It's an amplified version of me. That's it. So I don't have to break character. I can quick-wittedly answer the question. Whereas if I say I was forced to do a show where I was let's say I was a 1940s New York City marketing agent who's always smoking and drinking and Mad Men. Exactly.
Mad
That was
Men.
my character, right? I would have to pause if someone threw me off my script, pause, and I would probably build into my performance a few quibs where I could say, anytime I'm thrown off, that's the moment where instinctively I puff on my fake cigar. And that's going to give me the time to think about how it answer, but it also falls in line with the character's action. If someone asked them a question, they would probably puff their cigar as they thought about it. So it's almost like a security blanket that still fits my character, but buys me the time to fit in the script or fit in the character's script or what they would say. But it is something you definitely have to take note to.
Yeah.
If I get thrown off my game and a waiter drops a whole plate of dishes, how would my character respond to that, right? Asking all those questions before you ever step foot on stage is going to set you up to not get into a position where you're, talking in this attitude, and then a waiter drops a thing of plates and you make the joke and go, I did that with my mind. That one little disconnect for the audience could be all it takes for them to go, I'm not really following this. You know what I mean? And it's harder to play a character than to play yourself. But again, watch Pop Hayden. He's a master at it, an absolute master at it. I'm reading Will Smith's autobiography right now, and he talks about one of his first acting roles, and he'd never acted. So he's like, I don't know how the heck to do this. So he did, what's it called? Something acting. It's where they study method acting.
Method acting.
And he basically, method acting, from what I can understand, is putting your entire life, living this person's life, right? So doing everything in your normal day that this person would do. So when you're on screen, even when things that aren't in the script might happen, you can ad-lib and add these things in character. Well, Will did this to the point where he started affecting his family life and didn't even realize it, because this method acting had taken over to where he was playing this character in his real life. That's how I see Pop Hayden. I almost can't imagine Pop Hayden having a conversation out of character, because he's so committed to it. And I would bet you.
Yeah, and in a way, he knows this character his entire life, because he says he's trying to impersonate his grandfather, who was from the South, and basically try to act, talk, and behave like him. And this is when the character really start to function and to work in a way. But he had a lot of experience, right? Growing up with his grandfather, watching him over several decades, and so on and so on and so on. So it's not a stranger who is trying to impersonate or to come up with something entirely new. But we were talking about the benefit of having a stage show there, right? Because then you can invite the audience into your realm, and they will obviously buy into it, because the suspension of disbelief is easier when you say, I'm going to the theater, for example. So looking at the current situation, I'm a novice, right? I don't have the luxury to rent out the theater or the capabilities to build a whole stage show. So the environments I'm performing at the moment, the most is a close-up setting. How am I still able to incorporate all those magic props, which I hold so dear to my heart, into my current means of performing?
So if I understand the question correctly, let's say you're a modern performer, and you just want to be an amplified version of yourself on stage, but you find a prop that you love that's old and outdated. How do you bring that into a performance, specifically where you don't have the ability to be on stage and control that environment? So let's take a prop and use an example. Do you have a specific old or outdated prop that you would love to use, but maybe you don't have the character or the introduction to that prop that would make sense for your character? Do you have a prop in mind?
The cups and balls. I love the cups and balls trick.
Okay. That's a pretty simple answer for me, just because I've done the cups and balls for 20 years and I used the classic up until soon. You'll see. But really, I'm honest about it. And I use what a lot of other magicians have used, which is, I love magic, and I've loved magic ever since I was a kid. Now there's this magic trick that's almost like your graduation into real magic hood, if you will. Once you master this, you're really considered a sleight of hand magician, because there's so many things used in this routine that make you have to practice and do the things correctly. It's sort of the the classic homage or the classic rite of passage to magicians. Do you mind if I share that with you? This trick actually dates back hundreds of years. That is the introduction that excites people, right? And you can be yourself.
Right.
You're telling a true story. This is one of the oldest documented tricks in magic. Of course, they're going to be old props in that setup, right?
Yeah.
The disconnect I find with that specifically is it does pigeonhole you into a specific type of routine and set, right? This is an old trick. This is a classic of magic. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you leverage that too many times in the same performance, it becomes stale. So let's use a different example besides the cups and balls.
Linking rings.
Okay, great. So let's say you just wanted to modernize. Again, that one's a little tough just because everyone in the world has seen the linking rings. But let's just say you wanted to modernize that and make it fit your 2021 character. Now, again, we get poetic license as entertainers. So just off the cuff, I may come out and say, hey, you know, my great uncle used to work in a steel smith manufacturing facility. I had to go there every day after work or after school when I was growing up and hang out with him because he babysat me while my parents were at work. I was bored out of my mind, and there are these crazy machines everywhere that basically every single one of them could kill you. So he'd throw me in the corner with all the scraps of their metal, and I had hours every single day, 365 days a year to sit there and play. Let me show you what I came up with. And I would then, this talks about what he talks about in this chapter, I would then take the classic linking rings and modernize it to fit my presentation. Yeah. So maybe they're different colored, or they're weathered looking, or they look like they've got dings and chips out of them, like they were steel scrap metal or something, right? So it's taking the props to fit the character and the presentation to fit both the props and the character. So that would be one direction with linking rings is to not break character, but feel free to take the poetic licensing to make up a story that fits your character, right?
Right. That's
it might be adjusting your props.
No, I think that's a very good answer. Can you think of an example which you incorporated in your set?
Sure. So let's take a close up. Let me think. Yes, for many, many years, I did ring flight, and it was with an old ring case. Nobody has seen this ring case. It's one of the zipper ones, right?
Yeah.
Where you go, oh, I've got my keys here. If you just say that in my back pocket are my keys, and you pull out this purse and unzip it and dangle keys with a ring on it, you're going to get a reaction. It's still an amazing trick, but there is a disconnect because the person's going, what the hell is that thing? I've never seen anyone carry keys on that. Now, maybe they have, but more than likely they haven't. And it sure as hell wouldn't and didn't fit my character, because when I was doing that routine, I was 18, 19 years old. But I never thought, oh, how do I incorporate this to make sense, right? I'm just going to pull it out and I'll get the reaction. And because I got the reaction, I never thought, hey, this could be stronger if somehow I made this thing make sense. I just updated it to the Bonzo ring flight and never thought of it. But if I was to think of it today and was forced to do that in a close-up setting, you know, I would probably say something in the lines of, what's my challenge? I have to explain why this is my key set. Why is this my key ring? And I may just start with, look, I lose my keys all the time. It's an actual problem. I've gone through with my new car, 6 new keys already. And because it's a new car with one of those push button things, it's $300 every time I lose it. It's a goofy solution, but I have a solution, and it's something my girlfriend came up with. She sews leather. She sewed me this thing. Because if I can lose this, then it's 100% my fault.
Yeah.
Now, is that perfect? No, I just thought of it on the spot. But it at least allows me to be my character and justify why this prop is so awkward, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, Adam. Absolutely. I would like to go back to this point in our discussion when it comes down to patter, right? Basically, things you say, and we said we have to understand the persona or the character we are trying to bring across, or even go with our own, just amplified. Are there do's and don'ts where you say, okay, things to use, things definitely not to use, which are completely off limit?
Again, it's your character and what fits that character. So my character is a corporate, clean comedy entertainer. If I came out on stage and started telling a lot of political and off-color jokes, I've disconnected from my character. And that does a lot of things. It makes whoever hired you look like a complete ass. It disconnects you from the audience. Whereas if my character is a amazing Jonathan style, right, or an offensive comedian style, then they know what they're hiring. They know what they're getting into, right? So it all falls down to your character, knowing your environment, and knowing your audience, just like everything else. I personally don't believe in any off-color or political humor because I don't want to divide my audience at all. I think if you're clever enough, you can be just as funny without ever swearing, making a political or a religious joke, and certainly never making one of your audience members the butt of your joke, okay?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's the only way. There are people who've made entire careers off insulting people. So what's your character? Make sure your wardrobe fits that character. So if I'm a corporate, clean comedy magician and I come out in Make America Great or a Biden shirt or a button or a pin, while I might not address it, my wardrobe is going to offend half of the people in the audience, right? So know your wardrobe, that make sure it fits your character. It's the same rule with the presentation or patter. What you're saying has to fit what your character is. Now, if you're a professional and you're being hired by people, whatever your marketing material is and whatever you've promised to them, that's the character they bought. Okay. So if my website shows me as an eccentric, bedazzled jacket wearing, lion appearing master illusionist, and I show up and I do a corporate clean suit with comedy magic, I've lied to them. Right? They got something they didn't hire. My presentation doesn't fit. Even if I showed up in the bedazzle, and I make a lion appear, but my presentation and script is built very much for a keynote where I'm trying to give them this beautiful message behind it. Again, I've disconnected my presentation to my character.
That's so very interesting. Can I ask a question at this point? I'm sorry for interrupting. But
please. Please.
To my head. There's this Australian comedian, Jeff Jeffries, right? And he uses strong language in his act. And obviously, the task of a comedian is to look where the line is, go exactly to this line and stick your toe above it, right? So he can be edgy and basically trigger the audience in one way or another. The difficulty is, over time, society moves that line. And he always explains that when he made a joke 5 or 6 years ago, it was still kinda okay, but still over the line.
Yeah.
Now, with a society being much more sensitive, he's getting hate mails for jokes he told 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about when we're talking about the script and everything, right? Have you some tips on how to keep it contemporary? Because when you think of it, people in the 90s behaved completely different to nowadays standards. Do you have some tips on that?
Good question, 2 answers. The first, just write your script to never offend anybody, right?
Yeah.
I understand the buildup of tension and release that comes from comedians, right? And you're exactly right. Getting to the edge of that line and putting your toe over is what builds the tension and then allows it to release. You can look at, now I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but look at Jeff Foxworthy. He's never said a joke that is going to offend anybody, right? Will Smith and his hip hop. None of his hip hop will ever offend anybody because he doesn't swear in it. So one option is to just keep everything so clean that it will stand the test of time. One caveat of that is that if you don't update your show every year or 2 years or 3 years, it will still feel outdated.
Yeah.
So you've got to update your shows. Let's say you are a comedy magician and you toe the line, right? I think I'm probably not the person to answer that because I am so afraid of offending somebody. It takes them out of what I'm trying to accomplish so much that I don't have those kind of lines. Now I do have lines, for instance, a common line with the rope trick. Here's a large rope, here's a medium rope, and sir, this isn't a judge of your character, it's just a small rope. I know what audiences that will work for and what audiences I can't say that. That's like the riskiest thing I would say in my show. And I do that in maybe 30% of my shows. Because if there's even a chance that would offend somebody, I have another line for it. So another option is that you can have 2 scripts, right? You can have the script for the audience that's at an open mic comedy where you can say anything. And then you can have your script for people who may be easily offended.
Yeah.
But to stand the test of time, I think we should be updating our scripts at least every year. You might only change a word or two, but you should at least be looking at your script and saying what's happening in today's world. Maybe you make a joke about American Airlines. There's just a joke that fits, and you make a joke about American Airlines crashing a plane. And it's funny. It's not hurtful or anything. Well, that year, a terrorist attack happens on American Airlines. You're not going to still say that joke, because before, when it was nothing could be taken offensively, now too soon type thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not in the times, if you're not, your finger's not on the pulse of what's happening in the world, and you never update your script, you can easily fall into accidentally offending somebody. I don't think that's a huge thing. I think most people are smart enough to know, hey, something just happened, I should change that. But if you're not constantly, at least once a year or every 6 months looking at your script and rewatching your video of yourself performing, you're going to become stale. And I know the best in the world do the same routines for 10 and 15 years. They're still updating their scripts. The reason they do them for so long is because they can update and tweak and finite and make things better. So, be relevant, know what's going on, know who your character is. And, if you're on that edge and you're towing the line, just know that at some point you might say something that offends people, but that's part of your character. Knowing, hey, I say stuff that will offend people, so I know my audience to perform in front of. That's not an issue I have. I've got 2 or 3 lines that could be offensive that I know which shows to do them at and which shows not to.
One thing I realized when I was talking to you and picking your brain for some advice is that you have done some of your tricks thousands and thousands of times. But never once I've seen a performance of you and the things you said felt stale and not in the moment. I can imagine that after so many repetitions, it's extremely difficult to not get into autopilot mode and run through your lines, run through your performance, and lose the spectator on the way. I can imagine that the spectator feels immediately that you're not saying those lines for him, that you're just running a script, and how to avoid that. Can you give me any tips on that?
Great question, and a problem for a lot of performers. How do you not feel robotic and stale? How do you not let the audience know that this is the 1,000th time you've said that same line? Yeah. How do you make it feel like it's the first time anyone's experiencing it? That's hard to do. I have a few tricks and things that I use to accomplish it, but that's one of the bigger challenges, right? How do you not become robotic, and how do you at least give the impression to the audience this is the first time anyone in the world has seen this? For me, what helps is asking a lot of first names and really having conversations with these people, right? So I script into my routines where I can ask people their names. What do they do for a living? Are you from this area? Because now I'm in the moment. I'm actually having a conversation with somebody that I and again, this is one of the most important, care about the answer.
Yeah.
One thing I hate more than anything is a magician asking a question and talking over the answer, where it's as clear as day. They don't give a shit about the answer. They just had that in their script. That is one of the quickest ways to turn off an audience.
Yeah.
Hey, sir, what's your name? Brian? Brian, nice to meet you. What do you do for work? Okay. And then just go right into it. It's so clear to everyone that you didn't even hear what he said he did for work, right? Whereas if you flip that and say, I'm going to take part of my routine and actually have a conversation with this, it does a few things. It now warms you up to the audience, where a few things happen. The audience goes, shit, what if he asks me? Now they're a little bit on their toes. They're thinking about what would I say, but they're also seeing, oh, this guy actually cares about the answer the audience member gave. He's one of us. He's part of this group. And it has to be the first time, because there's no way he could have done that routine, because Bob doesn't go to every single show. So for me, it's really about living in the moment, looking at the environment, making a couple remarks about the environment. Man, is it cold in here? Maybe that's not a good example because that makes it look like the event staff has it too cold. But making remarks about, man, this room is beautiful. Or maybe you're in the basement of a hall and go, you probably didn't expect to see the world's best magician in a place like this, or whatever it is. But just drawing attention to the environment and having actual conversations with people and using their name again. Look at Penn on Penn and Teller. He uses people. Watch him ask someone their name. And then look at how many times he uses their name. It's almost like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And there's a few reasons he does it: to remember their name. But every time he uses their name, it puts him in that environment, in that spot, and makes it so he's not a robot. If you scale that up and have conversations, what do? Do you have any kids? Don't drag it out to where the audience is bored. But having those few bits in your show where you can ask, even in close-up, walking up to someone. Daniel Garcia is a master at this. If he goes up to a group, he'll learn about every single person in that group before he'll show you a single piece of magic. And they love him before he's even done magic. He's more interested than interesting, right? We should be the most interesting people in the room. We're magicians, but there's nothing wrong with being interested, genuinely interested in people, in the environment, in things that happen in the room. An easy solution: someone's phone rings and you could be like, come on, I told you to turn the phone off. The audience then goes, oh, that took him out of his robot mode and now it stopped his show. He's probably done this a million times. On the other hand, oh, your phone ringing? Let me see it real quick. No, I love when this happens. Now you're in the moment. You've made, so it really is about finding ways you can be in the moment. Yeah. And the easiest tricks I know to do that are have real conversations with people and give a shit about their answers.
To bring this conversation full circle, Fitzkee touched on so many points, right? The props, the apparatus you use, and he always talking about overall appearance. We already mentioned grooming, we already mentioned wardrobe, but we never went into details on those. Can you sum this up a bit and give us some insight into your experience as a professional performer in corporate settings?
I think the right answer is that you should always have your nails done. You should put makeup on if you're on stage. You should wear the nicest suit you can afford. You should make sure it's clean. Because, look, we're entertainers, right? At the end of the day, there's a lot of reasons why makeup. You look significantly better on stage with stage lights if you have makeup on. Even rock stars wear makeup because the lights will make your face look like you're a ghost and you're pale and sick if you don't put something on. So every movie star, anyone who's ever been on television, they're caked with makeup, right? It's a rule that I say is important that I don't follow. I don't follow it for a few reasons, and they're all bullshit reasons, but it's really because I hate putting makeup on. I do have very sensitive skin, and some makeup has made me blow out, but I know there's sensitive skin makeup. For me, it's just something I don't do. Is it right? Absolutely not. I know my show would be better if I took the time to put, and I'm not talking about eyeliner and mascara. I'm talking about putting some base on so when the lights hit your face, it doesn't show that you're sweating and it doesn't blow your face out. It looks better. You look more professional with makeup on. That's the only advice I can give you on that because I've got a whole makeup kit for stage and I don't use it. I should. So you should wear makeup for a lot of reasons. If you're a professional getting paid money to be on stage, professionals wear makeup. It's that simple. Your wardrobe, wear the nicest suit you can, right? I know corporate entertainers that have suits that aren't that expensive, but they put them in a Gucci suit protector. So when they walk into the event and somebody might be in the hotel before they go to their room, they see this guy's wearing Gucci. Again, know your audience. If you're a kid show entertainer, it's probably not that important, but bright colors might be important. Just make sure they're clean. Make sure you put the best appearance you can out there because, again, we are performers. We are theater entertainers, whether you're strolling or you're on stage. And that means you should be 25% dressed better than everyone else in the room. Your shit should be clean. You should be very easy to look at. You should be appealing to the eye. And if you come out with a wrinkled suit or a wrinkled shirt or your tie is crooked, that makes your audience uneasy. Go ahead.
That's super interesting because I can imagine that when I come out into a standard corporate strolling gig, and I wear a set of tails and a top hat, it would be significantly more difficult to build rapport with the people at the tables and then walk around setting than if I would be just wearing a typical business suit. I think that's why
If your
suits have been
character,
invented. Yeah.
if your character is a top hat and tailed magician throwing doves out from stage, it will make sense. If it's not, they're going to go, what the hell is this guy wearing? It's
Yeah.
all based around your character. I know your character. You wouldn't. You would wear a dope, dapper looking suit with your hair on point and you'd be you, right? That's your character. So if you came out in tails and a top hat, you don't know your character, right? That was the first thing we talked about. So you've got to fit your character, but in fitting your character, look good, right? Look as good as you possibly can, because it's easier for the audience to come along for that ride. You know, actors on TV don't just throw whatever they want on. They have entire teams to make sure every single piece of their wardrobe is exactly what it needs to be for you to suspend your disbelief.
And
If I'm coming out as a,
oh, go ahead, please.
just reiterating the point that if I'm a corporate clean comedy magician, they can hire me or 100 other ones. So I'm going to make sure everything they see, hear, and feel about me makes them feel good about their decision to hire me. His suit was on point. He looked good on stage. He was easy to look at. He didn't offend anyone. His nails were done to perfection. Is anyone going to see your nails on stage? Maybe not. Or maybe the CEO of the company that just hired you is the person you get up on stage and you hand them a deck and they notice that your nails are funky and you've got calluses and you haven't done your nails right. Might not be a big deal to you, but to that CEO, it might be a massive deal, right? The shoes you wear. Are you wearing cheap, stained, scuffed up dress shoes? Or are you wearing really nice polished shoes? You might not think it's a big deal. Shoes are one of the most important and first things noticed about a person's appearance, especially if you're on stage. Invest in a nice pair of shoes. Go to Payless and buy a $50 pair of dress shoes, but buff them like crazy so they look nice, right? Everything about your appearance should be to the highest level possible. There's nothing bad that can come from it. On the reverse of that, if you didn't do your nails, you didn't iron your suit, and you forgot to polish your shoes, there are, not every single time, but there is potential for bad things to come from that.
I mean, another example for an excessive wardrobe is Piff the Magic Dragon, right? But I guess the persona he puts on in combination with the dragon suit works for whatever weird reason. But
His character.
yeah, but only putting on a dragon suit and act normally, I don't think it would have the same effect.
Of course not. Yeah. I mean, even if you're a kid show entertainer and you walked out in Piff's suit and didn't make mention of it, and I didn't know that was your character, even then you're going to look like they'll get it, but they'll be like, what the heck's with the dragon suit, right? Piff can go into a corporate audience in that suit, and within 30 seconds, you know his character and you know why he's wearing that suit. He comes out and says, I'm a magical dragon. What? Right? That's his character. So, but again, his suit isn't by accident. You know, he didn't just go into a dollar store and
It's a
buy
child's
a suit.
extra large, right?
Yeah. But, you know, I think in rounding it all off, I think this chapter is really about appearance, whether it be your props appearance, your wardrobe, or you in general. And that appearance has to fit the character you're trying to portray on stage. There should be no disconnect from any of it. And if there is, if you have to force an outdated prop into the show, you've got to make it logical to your character, right? If I'm James Bond and I'm coming out with a old set of something, I have to then easily let them suspend the disbelief, right? Not some fairy came down and dropped this on my pillow one night when I was... Don't berate them, right? If you're going to tell a story, make it as believable as possible. And I think it's all valid. Now, he is harsh in a lot of the stuff he says, but for good reason. There are a lot of performers out there that don't care about what their nails look like or how their shoes look or their suit or the fact that one script of a routine drastically contradicts the next script, right? They get reactions from it, but they don't realize if all of that had a flow to it and all of it made sense, it would elevate their show to the next level. And it sometimes is easy to fall into the trap of, I get applause after every routine I do. That's great, but it doesn't mean that you're not missing something. You're not disconnected. So I think all of it's very important, from your wardrobe to how you look, to your nails, to what your props look like, to update them as best as possible. And it's also a great way to get creative. If you're stuck with a change bag, but you want to update that to fit your character, dope. You get to sit down at the drawing board and come up with something new that specifically fits your character. There's no better feeling in the world than having a problem like that and going, yep, there's a disconnect here. How do I update that? Putting in the hard work to get there and then performing with your updated piece that came from your brain, there will be nothing more true to your character than that.
All right. And I think this sums up the chapter.
Thanks again for being here. This is chapter number 2. Next week, we'll dive into chapter number 3. And as always, we've got 3 videos every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with one purpose: to help you become the best performer and entertainer possible. So if you're enjoying this, do subscribe, hit the bell notification. That way you know every time a new video drops. We'll see you on the next one.